Welcome back to the third episode of the Northern Steel Podcast. I'm your host, Dominic Paskowski. Of course, that is my name. You should know it by now because you're an avid listener and follower. And with me, of course, do I even have to introduce him? I doubt it, but I will. It's my brother, Christopher Paskowski.
What up, what up? Happy to be here.
Yes, we're back again. And Chris, we have a sponsorship today.
Oh, do we?
Yep, this episode is brought to you. Yes, it's real to me.
Okay.
This episode is brought to you by depression and pain.
Hooray!
That will be today's theme later on in the episode. But like we always do, let's talk about some of the NFL craziness that went on last week before we get into some Steeler news. Now, I think the day after we filmed last week's podcast, Chris, I think some big things happened, but I'm going to go down the list because I kind of have it in an order of which I want to say them, and you'll see why. People listening at home, keep those ears tuned in. The first one we talk about is Devante Adams being traded to the Raiders.
Mm-hmm.
Again, the AFC West is a powerhouse of a division. It really is.
What's next? Yeah.
I know. At this point, it really is. What's new? What's new, right?
Yeah.
The Saints signed Jameis Winston, so they get their quarterback. That's going to come into play a little bit later. The Falcons signed Marcus Mariota. That will come into play also a little bit later. Baker Mayfield is going to get traded to where? No one knows yet. And will he be traded at all? That's the thing, is that people are talking about, oh, will he be traded? Will he not be traded? He may be released. And here is why, big news of the day. I think the day after we record our podcast, Deshaun Watson was traded to the Cleveland Browns.
Boo.
Yeah, very, very, very unfortunate. I remember reading it, and it just sucked the life out of us, I think. Not because we wanted Deshaun Watson, but because it just seems so absurd. It came into left field, right? To recap, you guys who don't know the Deshaun Watson story, and yet you live under the rock. Under the rock, like Dwayne The Rock Johnson. I don't know why I said The Rock. I don't know why I said that.
And face clip. The Rock.
Living under the rock.
These are other
Deshaun
sponsor.
Watson was about to go to the Falcons and potentially the Saints. That was like his two options. And out of nowhere, Cleveland came in and swooped up and got the serial masseuse assaulter. They paid him $230 million. $230 million guaranteed dollars, which is more than Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers combined as guaranteed money. They gave up 6 draft picks, I believe. And everyone now wants to play for the Cleveland Browns.
Shocker, like always.
Now, the thing is, let's talk about this for a little bit. Just like we did last week about them trying to get rid of Baker, let's talk about this just a hair because they are a divisional opponent and we hate them. Deshaun Watson, I think, too, is also probably going to get suspended for 8 games, which is why they signed Jacoby Brissett. They also traded Case Keenum away, and now they have Baker Mayfield on kind of just sitting in limbo. He does not want to be there anymore. He feels disrespected, and he wants to leave. His preferred destination was... Sorry, I had to burp. His preferred destination was the Colts, but Matt Ryan traded to the Colts. Remember when I said the Falcons picked up Marcus Mariota? Well, they traded Matt Ryan away. Traded him to the Colts. Another team in the AFC. I read a post today, Chris. I think there was... Man, I want to say more than 10 trades between the AFC and from NFC players to the AFC. There's only one trade from an AFC player to, like, of significance, from an AFC player to an NFC team, and it's Carson Wentz to the Commanders. But a lot of players come to the AFC. So since Baker cannot go to Indianapolis, his other options are Seattle, which they're looking at some quarterback options, maybe in the draft, maybe not. The thing is, the Browns, they want like a first round pick or they want a high pick to get some draft capital back for Deshaun Watson. I don't think teams are going to do that. They see that the Browns spent all his draft capital and gave Deshaun Watson an insane amount of money for someone who's still going through these civil suits. And honestly, the Browns don't have any leverage. They really don't.
No.
Baker wants to leave. The Browns want him to leave, but everyone knows that, and they don't have any leverage. So I think he might get released. Now, there's a rumor that the Steelers might want him. I don't believe it, mostly because it's by Mary Kay Cabot? Maybe it's French. I'm not sure. But what I do know is from Browns fans who are on Twitter that they do not like her, and they think that she just reports kind of, I don't know, misinformation sometimes. So I don't know how much of that I buy.
Sure.
But that being said, Deshaun Watson, AFC North, great stuff. Here we go. Here we go, Steelers. Last bit of roundup news is with all these trades going on. Today, the bombshell that dropped was Tyreek Hill was traded to the Miami Dolphins.
Big, huge. And what's insane about that, kind of like Devante Adams, because Devante Adams is a 29-year-old receiver. Tyreek Hill's been in the league for maybe, I'm actually not even sure. Do you know, Chris? Maybe 5 years, 6 years? Maybe I can
more.
show you the Carfax real quick.
Yeah, why don't you look that up while I kind of spit some BS at the people. The trade that they made for Tyreek Hill, the Dolphins, that is, they traded away 5 picks, I think. They traded a first, a second, a fourth, and a sixth next year.
Mm-hmm.
So 5 picks away for Tyreek Hill, and they gave him a new contract that kind of averaged out to $30 million per year for the receiver.
Yep.
I mean, we're in a two things which sucks about that is when we're in a league where teams are just paying so much to keep these receivers. So you can argue that like the Packers and the Chiefs both kind of ruined their situation by paying their quarterback one, and then they lost their wide receiver one because they couldn't afford to pay them anymore based on what they're paying the quarterback. However, as great as Devante Adams and Tyreek Hill are, so much talent comes into the NFL every year through the draft, and you can kind of replace that. I don't know if you should be spending $30 million on a wide receiver. Tyreek Hill is very fast. He's great. He can elude pressure. Patrick Mahomes also was a big part of that equation. Kind of how I feel about Devante Adams too. Devante Adams is a really great receiver. Aaron Rodgers was also a big part of that equation. Will they, Derek Carr's not bad, but like, will they have the same numbers with these new quarterbacks? Like, is Tyreek Hill going to be able to do these same things with Tua? I would say no.
Yeah, I mean, looking at it, I don't really know how the outcome is going to be for Tyreek Hill in Miami. Looking at their roster, I think Tua really does not have an excuse this year when you look at all the weapons that he has.
Very true.
So it's going to be really interesting to see how they fare this upcoming season. But even going back onto the contract and how big it is, I never thought I'd see the day where a wide receiver would be getting quarterback kind of numbers. $30 million a year, that's insane, for really anybody, especially a wide receiver. And I think the thing that blew me away, like you said, is the 5 draft picks, because that's another thing. I mean, granted, when we lost Antonio Brown, he was going through his whole, crazy cycle and everything, but we got, what was it, a 3rd and a 5th round for him?
Yep, 3rd and 5th.
And at that time, he was arguably the best wide receiver in the game.
Right.
And so now you look at this Tyreek Hill and Devante Adams. I mean, obviously, I think kind of the Chiefs got a pretty good deal out of it by acquiring those 5 draft picks. Yeah, you might be losing that speed and quickness and whatever, but gosh, look at the combine for this year. Everyone was running at the wide receiver position for a low 4.3, if not faster. So, I mean, Tyreek Hill is a good talent. He let's see what he does in Miami. But at the same time, I don't think this will necessarily hurt the Chiefs all that much, but we will see what happens when the time comes.
Yeah, I agree, Chris. I think Tua as well, like you said, I think this is a big year for him to... there's a lot of question marks around Tua within the fan base and around the NFL. And it's kind of like, he's got Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, which is the fastest wide receiver duo in the NFL. He's got Mike Gesicki, who had a great year last year. He's got Chase Edmonds and another running back who are decent, right? He's also got Devante Parker, and they picked up Cedric Wilson from Dallas. So it's kind of like with Tua, you expect them to succeed with that kind of roster. Yeah. And if they don't succeed, then that spells trouble for not only Tua, but the Dolphins, because they traded with some picks. And who knows where you go from there if you go for another quarterback. That's kind of how I feel about the Browns as well. With that roster, with Deshaun Watson, Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, Amari Cooper. Didn't they just get another wide receiver too? Maybe not. But I know they would want maybe Jarvis Landry back. They have David Njoku. I mean, on paper, Antonio Brown tweeted that he'd play for them. Of course he did. I'll drink bleach if he does that. On paper, they should win a lot of games too.
Mm-hmm.
Will they? That's the question. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. And I mean, also, I mean, we're kind of off the whole Miami thing. You transitioned over to Cleveland, so not a big thing. But I know they were a team that got hot kind of late last year and just barely missed the playoffs. But especially now they lost out on Brian Flores too. So it'll be interesting to see with the coaching change as well, kind of how they fare altogether.
Appreciate that, Miami, for letting go of Brian Flores.
Thank you.
One other thing I forgot before we move on is the Bengals also signed La'el Collins. So they got a little bit stronger as well.
Good.
So every team in the AFC is looking real strong. There's a point I'll make about that later. Stick around and you'll hear about it. So next, let's go, Chris, after that NFL roundup, let's go into some Steeler news. So a positive from this past week, we signed a player.
Yay!
We signed Gunnar Olszewski. Olszewski.
Yay, Gunnar!
I just wanted the silent clapping.
Good job. He looks too much like that no regrets guy.
He does.
And it's just a little concerning for me. But
he did make. If you don't know who Gunnar, say it again, Chris. Gunnar Olszewski. If you don't know who that is, he made first team All Pro in 2020 with the New England Patriots as their kick returner and punt returner. Looking at his highlights, he looks pretty decent. I mean, he didn't really break a bunch. He got some good chunk yardage. Basically, kind of what you expect from Ray Mcleod, but for a lot cheaper. Speaking of Ray Mcleod, this past week, I think within 24 hours, we lost 3 receivers. We lost Ray Mcleod to the 49ers. We lost James Washington to the Cowboys. And we lost Juju Smith-Schuster to the Kansas City Chiefs. That's where the depression comes in and the pain.
All time.
The thing with Ray, we weren't sure about when we discussed free agency moves. We weren't sure if he was going to go, but we kind of figured James Washington would probably leave. The Juju one was kind of up in the air both times, but it makes sense to me, like we said, that he'd want to go. I think a lot of fans give him too much hate. Sounds like potentially from his camp and his mom that they wanted to stay, and the Steelers didn't want him. Could be the case, not really sure. The thing is like we said before, Juju's somebody we'll probably root for. And now he's got a big opportunity again. If he wants to cash in next year, this is his big opportunity right now because, like we mentioned, the Chiefs traded away Tyreek Hill. So Juju's now the number one receiver on that team.
Crazy how that works out.
Yeah, exactly. They've been rumored to pick up some other possible stud receivers, older guys like Odell Beckham. They've been rumored to maybe go after him.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they might swoop in and take Julio Jones away because I know he might want to play with the Colts with Matt Ryan again. They've been looking at Marquez Valdez Scantling. Or, now they have another draft pick in the first round, so they might just draft a receiver. There's probably
very well good. Yeah.
So that was very depressing news. It kind of happened with Deshaun Watson getting signed to the Browns, and then it happened with us losing 3 players all within like a 24-hour span.
Dude, it was almost immediately. When we were getting updates about the whole Watson watch, like you said earlier, and we were looking and it saw like how Saints were in there and then Falcons, and it was looking like Falcons were going to finalize that. And we already knew that Cleveland got booted from the competition of the Watson watch. That all of a sudden kind of came out of nowhere. And then it was just, an obvious punch to the gut. And I was at work at the time, so I'm getting all this news from you, sending it over to me. And then all of a sudden, I come back to a big, Dom shared a tweet with you in all caps, no. And what was it? Juju got signed by the Chiefs. And I was like, this might be one of the worst days of my life. So,
yeah, it was
like a 1-2 punch.
So I was thinking, in honor of Juju and his other players we lost, maybe we give them a quick memoriam, Chris. I've got a piano over here next to me. I'll move the camera to see it. And I'll play a little sad little tune. And if you can give me just a quick speech about these players we lost, I think that'd be just appropriate.
Let me preface this. These words are all coming from the heart. I'm going to speak very quickly on a few of them, but I have a big message for Mr. Smith-Schuster. Dom, are we ready?
We sure are.
All right. First off, to my man, Mr. James Washington. We just ultimately want to thank you for your time that you shared in Pittsburgh. You were such a good talent that was sometimes utilized, and we loved seeing that occasional jump up and Moss catch. But obviously your time in the black and gold has come to a halt, and we just can't help but say thank you, and we wish you luck with the Cowboys, and hopefully they can utilize your skill set more than we did. Moving over to Mr. Ray Mcleod. Ray, you were on our team for a short stint, and we also want to say thank you for your grit and your hard work and your ability to bring a special teams return game back to Pittsburgh. You led in a lot of categories, and we thank you and we appreciate you for your time. Moving on to Mr. Joe Hayden. This one's tough. This was also another blow, but gosh, we love you. We wanted you on our team for such a long time, and we finally did it, and it was wonderful. We are so sorry that we could not bring you a playoff win. We are sorry that, your time here has been cut, but we appreciate everything you have done, and we wish you luck in your endeavors. Now, on to Juju. Juju, we cannot put into words how much you truly mean to us. From the day you were drafted in 2017 till now, you represented the black and gold, and every time you put on your uniform, you wore it like a badge of honor. You epitomized what it meant to be a Pittsburgh Steeler, and we appreciate you. And to everyone who doubted you, saw you as a distraction, and thought your mind was more focused on TikTok and branding, shame on you. Your comments and hate was unnecessary for a man who was just trying to have fun and play the game he loved. Juju, to say we are saddened by your departure is an understatement. We love you. We appreciate your positivity on and off the field. And we are truly rooting for you in your next stages of your football career. And we'll always look at you as family and forever remember your days in the black and gold. Thank you.
Thank you, Juju.
I'm sorry about that one, Dom. I had to go a little bit more off for Juju. I just felt so saddened by the loss of him going to the Chiefs and all these posts that I've been seeing on Twitter and everything, even the videos of him putting on that hat. That's not Juju, man. He was so not happy. He wanted to be a Steeler so bad, and I had to say a little bit extra for him.
No, it's okay. I get it. No, I feel the same way. It's tough.
Dom, it's okay, dude.
It's tough out here.
It's okay, dude.
Tough out here. I hope you liked our little tribute in memoriam.
Believe it.
Believe it indeed. Moving on. Take away the sadness. Let's talk about going forward for the Steelers right now. Now, we've talked about free agency the past 2 episodes. Free agency is still going on, with rumors still out there that we might get Tyrann Mathieu or maybe some other players, potentially, but probably not. We're probably done. So instead of talking about free agency some more, let's move towards the draft. Now, these past 3 days, including today, were pro days for some college quarterbacks. Monday was Kenny Pickett from Pitt.
Yes, sir.
Tuesday, Malik Willis from Liberty. Wednesday, and I think Tuesday was also Carson Strong, wasn't it?
It was Carson Strong as well.
Yep,
out of Nevada.
And Wednesday was Matt Corral from Ole Miss. So, Chris has done a lot of great research about these quarterbacks. He's watched the tapes, he's watched the pro days, and I want to just give him the floor and tell the people, Chris, what you thought about these quarterbacks.
Sure thing. First look, I had to go with my personal favorite, Mr. Kenny Pickett out of Pittsburgh. First things first, we have to address the elephant in the room. And it is the fact, in my opinion, that size does not matter.
What?
But, yep.
How?
Believe it or not, you're hearing it first from me. His hand size we're talking about, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Man, my wife says size does matter.
Well,
we're getting divorced.
Oh.
Just kidding.
But yeah, moving back on, that seemed to be the biggest talk about Mr. Kenny Pickett during his combine tryouts. Kenny's hands measured in at a whopping 8.5 inches.
Is that adult male or child?
That is adult male.
Okay.
He has the smallest hand size. I sense the stat said 2003. Wow. And that was by Mr. Short Hands Ferguson.
Wow.
You remember him?
I sure don't. Now, I imagine that having short hands, I mean, it'd be really tough to play outside in some cold weather like Pittsburgh. Do you think he could do it?
And it's probably why they had him play inside a dome. The Pittsburgh dome, that is, that training facility.
Oh,
and so many times as I was watching, I heard so many people say, man, it's a good thing he's playing in this dome. It makes teams like, the Saints feel really comfortable about him because, he has that ability to play within that area.
He sure does.
And I thought, shucks, if only he played in the hard weather terrain of snow and sleet and just mud and grossness. But he's never had that experience.
Well, we'll get him next time. What else did you find out about him?
Well, I found out that his hands actually grew. His hands were measured in at 8 5/8 inches, so it grew an eighth of an inch. And when asked about it, he said, "Well, dang, those hand stretches sure did work."
Let's go. Grower, not a shower.
Yes, they did. They actually did a super in-depth analysis on his hand size, and he did state that Kenny Pickett's hands are pretty double jointed, especially at his thumb. And so when it's measured on a flat table, it comes out pretty short. But he said that when it's gripped around a ball, it actually is about 9 inches around, which grows an inch. I mean, half an inch. I don't know how that works, but it was actually confirmed by one of the Panthers, I believe coach, who went and actually measured his hand size himself, holding the ball.
Have you seen that TikTok where that guy, he could take his thumb and it goes, and it like grows? Have you seen that? He like does something with his joints. Not. Oh, it's really gross. So if you guys are listening at home and you know what I'm talking about, he like goes like this and it goes, and it grows like a whole inch. I bet that's what Kenny Pickett does. He goes, great, and then he's got these Edward Scissorhand type fingers, and he goes, now I'm good.
I compare him to Luffy from One Piece. Sure. He just is able to stretch, and that's Kenny Pickett's little secret, is he's just able to stretch his fingers across that ball. He just wears the gloves as a cover-up. It's not for grip.
Sure. How was his throwing, Chris? Like, what did you think?
Sure. So from what I understand, what I've been reading on, and then the clips that I was watching, Kenny Pickett seemed very electric out there. His throws had a lot of pop to it, a lot of zip. There's a couple of them on those deep throws where there's a lot of airtime to it. But they obviously did not disappoint. The man was on fire. Looking at every single one of his throws, even the deep ones, they were spot on to his receivers. And he was having a field day. I think I counted maybe 2 overthrows, but at the same time, like that's going to happen. You're not going to be 100% accurate every single time. And the thing that people really loved about Kenny Pickett is not only were his deep throws and short balls really accurate and great, but his ability to throw on the run was considered some of his best throws of the day. And sure. I got to watch it, and I agree with that, especially when he rolled out to the left. A lot of quarterbacks really have to set those feet first and then make that throw, whereas Kenny Pickett has this weird body mechanic to him to where he's able to almost throw off his back foot while rolling out that way and still make really surprisingly accurate throws. So I was very impressed by everything I saw Mr. Pickett do at his pro day. He got rave reviews, and I do believe that both Mike Tomlin and Kevin Colbert were there in attendance, as well as Matt Canada, to watch him perform. Granted, it's not a super far jaunt for Mr. Tomlin and Colbert to go,
no.
But
it is not.
but they were there in attendance.
Okay, so that's great. So it sounded like he did pretty well. I know that's a quarterback that you and I both like. Do you mind if we jump to the next one?
Sure. Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's go over to Malik Willis at Liberty. How'd you feel about him?
Malik Wheels was different. It was really cool. It's kind of funny because when I was looking up his pro day tape, I don't think they cut out any of the in between because it was 27 minutes long, and so wow. I indeed watched all of it. And I got to say, it was pretty good. Malik Willis has a lot of talent, and I think he is definitely a scary guy with a lot of upswing. And I know that was stated before, reading a lot of tweets from Alex Kozora and Nick Farabaugh saying how Malik Willis is seen as very raw. He might not be a day one starter in the league, but he's someone with a really high ceiling. And that's someone that a lot of teams, really want. That's the guy that they feel they can build a franchise quarterback out of. So watching a lot of his tape, he mostly did all things throwing and pocket related. He did not participate in any 40 or running drills because he felt like he's already established himself as a runner and person that's able to escape a pocket.
Sure.
And so he was like, I'm here to show off my arm. And if there's anyone that has questions about me as a player, it's my ability to throw, which I thought was a very cool thing for him to do. Instead of showing off everything, you want to show what people feel like could be your weakness.
Now, everyone wants to know, Chris, because with a quarterback of Malik's stature, sometimes maybe accuracy can be questioned into that. How did he look from an accuracy standpoint on all throws?
So overall, I was pretty impressed with what he's got, especially his deep throws. His deep throws were far, they were strong, and they were on the money. They were very impressive. Nice. I mean, this dude, even on the run, was throwing it deep down the field, and it was spot on to the guy. I'll be honest, the short throws seemed a little bit more inaccurate. Not that he missed anybody. It's just there was a few times where I saw, maybe a throw was a little behind, or maybe placement of the ball was a little, iffy. not where you wanted it to be. But I feel like during your pro day, you're throwing it 300-400 times, so you're bound to have a couple of those throws. I'd say that's kind of my area of concern, but also it might just be because it's a position that he's still trying to work on and be better at. So sure. maybe there's a lot of upside to that. I do got to say a big thing that they talked about with Malik Willis is his good teammate mentality. Before coming into his pro day, he was just psyched, not so much for himself, but for the fact that the scouts there could witness his teammates. And he spoke on that, and I thought that was a really cool thing because he's very teammate oriented.
Sure.
And then the other big thing people talked about was that Malik Willis is built like a truck, a semi truck, that is. The dude, I kid you not, heard that he has thighs compared to that of Saquon Barkley.
No way.
Which, if anyone, yep.
No way.
And a guy even said, and I quote, he weighs 225 pounds, and 220 of that must be in his lower body.
Golly.
And that's got to be some of that schmeat, you know what I mean?
Speaking of schmeat, I know. I know.
It's a great transition.
I try to keep it together. I know. Speaking of schmeat, I know a lot of Steeler fans are absolutely bricked up for this man. They cannot contain their excitement. They cannot contain their pants tightening and getting shorter over the thought of Malik Willis joining this team. I know that in the past, you and I have been on the fence about him. Does this pro day kind of help you out? And what would you say? Like, is it warranted to be that excited about Malik Willis?
It's very hit or miss, right? Like I think, like I said earlier, the talent's very raw, and I do think he has a very high ceiling. I just don't know personally. I think a lot of what I look for is actual in-play situations, and looking at highlights and tapes from last year. And although he did have a lot of good highlights to him, you can definitely tell, he utilizes a lot more of his running ability. And I know Steeler fans are very obsessed with the whole mobile quarterback. I know we are talking a lot saying how people really want a Lamar Jackson-like player on our team. I don't know if you're necessarily getting that.
Even though all the fans make fun of Lamar Jackson for being a running back, but that's just hypocrisy.
Just a little bit. Just a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think as far as the talent goes, I don't think he'll be even at the 20 position, and I think we'd have to trade up for him. But in my personal opinion, I just looking at Kenny Pickett from his pro to combine to his play, there's a reason he won ACC Player of the Year, and I think that's because his ceiling is high, and I think he's improved so much from even the year before to now. I feel like he's way more of an NFL-ready quarterback, in my personal opinion. I think Malik Willis is going to be good, but I don't know exactly how good.
I want to add to that point, and I'll talk about that. But let's fish. But I want to recognize that those are the two quarterbacks everyone's kind of talking about for the Steelers if they draft one in the first round. Kenny Pickett and Malik Willis. I will talk about them later. Let's kind of round off because I know you did the work on it. Let's talk about the two quarterbacks that honestly not a lot of people maybe know or care about. I know I don't, but let's do it anyways. Let's talk about Carson Strong first.
Sure. Carson Strong, to me, I was a little less excited to look at. I think he's definitely a candidate that we need to look at. And I mean, I think Steelers have definitely shown some interest in Carson Strong. In fact, Mike Sullivan, our QB coach, was in attendance to Nevada's pro day to see Carson in action. That being said, from what I understand and what I was looking at, he had great deep passes. All right, his deep passes were very accurate, and he definitely has the arm strength behind it. The part of concern for Mr. Carson Strong, which he showed greatly in his pro day, is something that people were very concerned with during his season, was his short throws seem very inaccurate. He isn't the best at leading guys, across the field for little slants or outs. He struggles a lot with ball placement in those shorter throws. And that was something that even when I read about it, people seemed to really notice during his pro day, was his short throws were an area that lacked.
Sure. I don't think he's a first round pick regardless, but let's move on from him. Give me about today's pro day, Matt Corral. Coral?
Sure.
I don't know.
Yeah. So Coral, I believe he had a lot of upside to his pro day, actually. I'm not really sure who was in attendance, if we had any Steeler guys there. Did you read anything on that?
Yeah, I think we did have some people there. I know the biggest team in attendance, kind of like, not to derail this a little bit, but kind of like Kenny Pickett's pro day. I read that, we were there, but the biggest team there was the Panthers.
Yep.
And for Matt Corral, the biggest team there in support was Seattle.
Interesting.
So.
Yeah, no, and that's a great point to bring up. Matt Corral did not disappoint. I mean, I kind of see Matt Corral as a good second rounder. Like, if you can acquire him in the second round, that seems like a very appropriate spot for him to get drafted. During his pro day, we got a lot of chances to see Matt Corral throw, and he really did not disappoint. He had really quick releases, and his ability to kind of rip it down the field. He would drop it right over the receiver's shoulders, and the accuracy was right there. Especially in his end zone work, as working with fades and receivers and placement in the back corners. That seemed to be a big spot that I was impressed with. So ball placement was definitely a big thing. But yeah, I mean, overall, the dude looked really healthy. He was getting around. He was moving pretty well outside the pocket. His throws on the run were not as great as I wanted them to be, or as great as I saw with like Kenny or Malik. And we kind of knew that. I mean, he's kind of been, Matt Corral has been a guy that's been in the talks, but I think we definitely knew that the big targets there were those two guys. But he's definitely a candidate that I would probably consider above Carson Strong if the situation presented itself.
All right. Well, yay. Thanks, Chris, for doing all that research and giving us the lowdown on these four quarterbacks. I know we signed Big Money Mitch, but quarterback could still potentially be an option. Some things I want to throw in after Chris just gave this long-winded explanation for all you people. You better be grateful, and you better let him know. But I will just jump in my 2 cents before we move on to the next topic. Like Chris said with Kenny and Malik, I believe that, I think Chris and I are more on the Kenny Pickett camp. A lot of Steelers fans are on the Malik Willis camp. It's understandable. Malik Willis he's got the assets to be a great athlete and all these things. The thing is, remember that these pro days, and when they both did well, it's football in shorts. There's no pressure, and they're just throwing the ball. They are supposed to be an NFL pro quarterback. So throwing the ball is something they should be able to do. Now, there's so many other elements to the game. Can they read defenses? Can they make good decisions? Can they do all that in a game time situation? That is where I file more into possibly Kenny Pickett on that one, because I think Malik might use his legs first instead of scanning the field, where I think Kenny will use his mobility to scan the field to throw. I also think Kenny's decision-making might be a little bit better as well. However, if the Steelers draft Malik Willis, it sounds like they really love him. It sounds like they like him. Me and Chris are on board to root for Malik Willis all the way. Number one in our hearts. We're ready. We're there to support our guy. We're just giving you an opinion on what we have, and we do like Malik a little bit more. However, we like Kenny. Sorry, a little bit more. But Malik's pro day was impressive. He had that one bomb throw that's been everywhere, all over the highlight tapes, where he rolled it to the left and threw it 65 yards in the air on the money.
More than one.
Yeah, more than one he did that. So that all looked really great. I don't really have a preference for Carson Strong or Matt Corral. If that is someone you like, get over it. We also did not talk about Desmond Ridder. If that's someone you like, wait for his pro day. But I can tell you, get over it. I don't think they're going to go after him. They might. You never know. But those will come in later rounds. What I want to talk about real quick, if Kenny Pickett or Malik Willis are the draft pick, I think Chris, you made a great point that the Steelers would have to trade up for Malik Willis. So I have the NFL draft order pulled up right now. We can kind of go through who might get a quarterback and who might not, right?
Sure.
So Jacksonville Jaguars, they're first, they won't. Detroit Lions are
No.
second, they might. That's as high as I've seen them go. I don't think they would, but they might. Okay? So if you're a Steelers fan looking for a quarterback, Malik could be gone as high as that. That's what I've heard. I don't think that will happen, though. Houston Texans at 3 might. Okay? The interesting thing about these players, I don't know why my camera just got so bright. The interesting thing about these players is that, or these teams rather, is that there's been all these quarterback carousel. We kind of talked about that earlier, these quarterbacks being traded from this team to that team and other free agents being signed. This draft class truly isn't that strong with quarterbacks. We're talking about Kenny Pickett and Malik that we like, but next year you have CJ Stroud, who is considered to be a very, very high pick, if not number one. And you also have Bryce Young, right, from Alabama?
Yep.
Who's also considered a very, very high pick and a better quarterback. So the quarterback class is supposed to be better. So there is a option, too, for these teams that might be missing a quarterback or have signed somebody that they would rather just maybe pick up pieces in this draft and draft a quarterback next year. And we might be in the exact same boat. The Steelers might get a quarterback, or we might be thinking the same thing. Hey, let's get some pieces while we can and draft a quarterback next year. So at number 3, you have the Houston Texans. They're rocking with Davis Mills right now. Could they draft a quarterback there? They could. Or they could keep building because they just got a bunch of draft picks from Cleveland.
And the thing is, Davis Mills didn't do a bad job. I mean, the thing is, when in doubt, if anything goes bad with Davis Mills, he can always draft punch people with his long-ass neck.
Yeah.
And so that is something to be a little intimidated by. But I mean, like you said, it's all about building. We don't know if they're going to be going right for a quarterback, especially with how the class looks, but we'll see what happens.
Jets won't go for quarterback. I don't think Giants will. Carolina at 6 probably will. They're thinking Kenny Pickett, but again, they have Sam Darnold and they could build for the future, but I think they'll probably go quarterback. Then you got Giants again. I don't think they will. Atlanta Falcons at 8. They could, because they have Marcus Mariota. Or they could go for, or they could build. Then you got Seattle Seahawks at 9. So what's really, sorry, I just want to finish this and then go ahead. What's really tough about that is Carolina at 6, Atlanta at 8, and Seattle at 9. Those are the 3 strongest teams right off the bat. And it's going to be tough to trade ahead of one of those teams to get a quarterback.
Agreed. And all I was going to say is, especially looking at teams like Atlanta and, having Marcus Mariota, I feel like they're in a very similar situation that we are in, as far as the quarterback selection that they picked up. I know that we picked up Mitch Trubisky, and we're seeing him as more of a bridge option. Not saying that we aren't going to get a quarterback. I don't know what or who we are going to get in the draft, but at the same time, they might be using Marcus as a, hey, I don't think we're going to get any of the talent that we want, like a Matt Ryan, like we had with Matt Ryan. So let's see how Marcus does for the next 2-3 years and see if we are interested in more of those guys like Stroud or Bryce Young or future guys past that.
Right. And that's the argument that I think some teams could do. But as we've seen, a lot of teams are just hungry for like power right now. They're hungry to climb up those rankings, and they might panic and they might get a quarterback right away. I think those are the 3 biggest teams. At 10, you got the Jets. That's not happening. 11, Commanders. They just got Wentz. 12's Vikings. They just got, or they have Kirk
Cousins.
13's Texans again, so they could go QB there if they don't do it at 3, or they could keep building. 14's Ravens. They're not getting a quarterback. 15's Eagles. They're not. 16's Eagles. They're not. 17's Chargers. They're not. 18 is the Saints. They might. They do have Winston, like we talked about. And they have got their own. They've got a lot of other holes to fill, but they might. 19's Philly, 20's us. So to get someone like Kenny, even Kenny, because a lot of people do. I know we're making jokes, but a lot of people do picture him going to the Saints. We would have to jump up a couple spots to Philly, to probably take one of Philly's spots to steal Kenny away from the Saints. But for Malik, I think you got to jump in the top 10. And like we discussed, is that something we want to do for the quarterback class this year? Do we think that's really worth it? Some fans say yes. I don't know if it does. But, hey, these are just options. That's what they might do. I think the first round this year, Chris, could be crazy. Last year, we knew that they wanted Najee Harris. We wanted Najee Harris. And when it came to our pick and he wasn't picked yet, we're like, okay, that's what we're getting. For sure. But this year it's like, strap in. This draft's going to be crazy.
And I wouldn't be surprised, and we'll get into this a lot more in the following weeks when we talk about other positions other than quarterback for the draft. But I wouldn't be surprised if we even made a move such as pulling back a little bit in the draft, especially if one of our top guys are not there at 20. Right. And that might even be a better move to get us some even more draft capital, especially into that second round, so we can maybe get a couple linemen, things like that. But we'll get more into that at a later time. I'm really excited to see kind of what we're gonna do. I have no idea, Dom. Looking at free agency, how are you feeling about everything?
How I'm feeling is that, kind of like what we said with the draft, is that I really don't know what we're going to do. I think it's going to be fun. I think it's going to be crazy. I do hope that you can get work off, because we might have something a little special planned for the draft, potentially.
Ooh.
But truly, Steeler fans out there, I know we kind of talked with a lot of information at the end, and the beginning started with a little sadness. I do think right now we have a better team than last year. Okay, So I think we're building. I think that's something to be excited about. I said that last week, but I think we have a better team. But Steeler fans, I need you to understand something. We Chris and I try to pride ourselves on being logical, and I want you to be prepared for us to possibly have a losing season or a worse record, or in general, a worse record than last year. Not because of our play, but because of how strong the AFC is.
It's terrifying.
Our whole division is a lot stronger. I mean, we got a little bit better, but everyone in our division is going to get a lot better, especially considering the Ravens should get all their players back from IR.
Yeah.
So our division's really tough. AFC West is really tough. Colts and Titans are really tough. Jags could come out of nowhere. They might be tough. I'm not really counting it right now. Dolphins got Tyreek. On paper, their offense looks tough. I mean, everybody looks really good. Now, if we get Tyron, we're trying to run through defense, but hopefully we're building. But just keep your expectations a little bit lower, and let's just try to have some fun this next year.
It's all it's ever been about, having fun.
For those of you listening, Chris and I died inside saying that. Okay. I think that's about wraps it up for this week, Chris. Hopefully next week we might have some news about a potential new signing. And maybe we'll talk about I know we'll talk about some more drafting ideas as we get closer to the draft. But thank you all again for listening to the Northern Steel podcast. My name again is Dominic Paskowski. This is my brother, Christopher Paskowski. And we wish you a great week. And if you are in Cleveland, do not go to your nearest massage parlor. Thank you.
Thank
Chris,
you.
Any last words, Chris?
The only thing I can think of at a time like this is God help us. No, I'm kidding. Go Steelers.
All right, man. Here we go.